afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining Arctic IT's webinar, 5 Better Ways to Manage Tribal Members. Today, we are excited to have our very own Sarah Jelinek, Technology Evangelist, and Pre-Sales Solution Architect Bryan Schmidt presenting for us today. Since we have a lot of material to cover, we're going to hold off on questions to the end of the webinar. So please jot down your questions, save them, and at the end, we'll address them. So with that, let us welcome Sarah and Bryan.
Thank you, Joanne. My name is Bryan Schmidt, and welcome to this session of Tribal Platforms Enrollment, empowering tribes to thrive through powerful and affordable technology. I'm joined by Sarah Jelinek, who is a technology evangelist here at Arctic IT. We represent a team of consultants and developers who work every day to build and configure solutions for tribal government organizations across the US and Alaska. Arctic IT is a native-owned organization that is committed to bringing tribes, helping tribes use the latest technology to deliver services to their members. We are your technology partner and trusted advisor to help you deliver outstanding results. Our agenda for today is to provide a brief overview of Arctic IT's product called Tribal Platforms Enrollment. Sarah and I will show you how your tribal organization can use this powerful solution. We'll then walk through a short demonstration of a few scenarios that enrollment teams encounter. Over the past several years, Arctic IT has worked with many tribes to improve their member management processes. In that time, we have collected best practices and found that technology improvements have transformed the way that tribal organizations work with their members. In the past, it was not uncommon for tribal teams to manage isolated databases of information, and membership details were shared through paper reports or required a phone call. Today, staff expect to work using integrated tool sets that support a seamless flow of information to save them time and increase accuracy, not only internally, but also for the tribal members. Today, tribal councils are asking questions and searching for ways to improve tribal member services. With limited financial resources, the goal is to make the most of services provided and improve the lives of all members. Applying the latest technology platforms and tool sets can be that differentiator. The Tribal Platforms solution is designed to be a member master database. This means that various services provided to tribal members are collected and reported from a single source. Enrollment and member demographics form the starting point for this member master database. Tribes that collect program participation and member applications can use this member database to provide a unified view of services provided or being used by a member or group of members. This becomes a source for reporting on program participation while streamlining the process of program eligibility assessment. The enrollment solution is built on a Microsoft Dynamics 365 platform, which provides a robust suite of tools that you use every day to complete your work. Dynamics 365 applications are tightly integrated to Office 365 suite, including Outlook, Word, Excel, and SharePoint. The enrollment-based solution provides most core functionality required by tribal enrollment teams to manage the member demographics and membership details. Dynamics 365 provides a flexible platform that allows our experienced consultants to extend the functionality of the enrollment solution for specific business requirements of your tribe. This extensibility model is a big differentiator to allow your team to easily add data and functionality. The navigation, look, and feel within Tribal Platforms Enrollment are consistent and clean. The solution will feel familiar as it behaves just like other Office 365 solutions. The Dynamics 365 platform also allows you to use the Tribal Platforms Enrollment solution anytime, anywhere, on any device. Now let's take a look at 5 ways that Tribal Platforms Enrollment can better manage your tribal members. Sarah, I understand that our tribal member enrollment solution provides static reports that allow enrollment users to generate lists of members to print. I've heard from enrollment staff that they need more flexibility to create their own lists and reports. Can you show us how Tribal Platforms Enrollment helps this need?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bryan. You're right. Other enrollment software does have the capability for you to gather some of those static reports and lists. With tribal enrollment being built on Dynamics 365, we can empower your users to build their own type of reports, views, dashboards, so they can get the most out of the data that's stored in Tribal Platforms Enrollment. Now, the first time someone logs into Tribal Platforms Enrollment, they'll see this screen, and I'm actually in our data system, or in our tribal enrollment system right now. And the great thing I can see, first of all, is this dashboard. So as we know, the term dashboard is really helpful from a reporting perspective, or just a high-level overview perspective of what's happening in our system. This dashboard that a tribal enrollment user would get to see will give them an overview of what's happening with their members in their member master database. In this example, I have a couple of different components I can view to help me get a better understanding. I can see charts, for example, looking at my living members of the tribe and seeing a breakout of how many tribe members we have based on their blood quantum, as well as their age group. If I scroll down a little bit further into this dashboard, I'm also going to see some other lists or queries that I think are going to help me better serve my members and better do my job. In this example, I can see my living members of the tribe by their enrollment date. So who joined most recently, who joined a few years ago, I can see that information. I can actually access these records from here if I want to. I can also look at pending membership status change requests. Who's applying for membership? Who's trying to enroll in our tribe as to be a member? I'm going to be able to see this on a dashboard. There are lots of different dashboards that are available for you out of the box, but you can also create your own dashboards within the system. Now, how do some of these lists or reports get created? As we mentioned, a lot of them are available out of the box, but you as a user will be able to change what you're looking at any time within the system. Now, I'm actually going to take you up to our workspace navigation pane up here at the top, and let's go right into tribal platforms. Everything in this system is going to revolve around our contact record or a membership record. We have the capability in Tribal Platforms Enrollment not only to track our members, but also any contacts that might have any relationships with those members. Maybe non-tribal members that are in the household, or maybe they are contacts that work with that person or have some type of connection or relationship. We're able to house not just our member database, but any other important key essential contacts. Now, if we have a combination of those records, one of the benefits that Tribal Platforms Enrollment allows me to do is to segment those members into different lists. In this example, my view as an enrollment user that I see by default is the members of the tribe living. So I can see I've got 10 member records here. I can actually change this view at any time. And if I want to, I can look at members of the tribe all. This will include those members that have passed away, so I can see the entire list. If I wanted to look at those other contacts within the system, I can change my view to active contacts and see every record that we have within the system. But if these views don't meet your requirements or the special views or criteria that you want to use to pull out that membership information, you will have the power to create your own reports, your own queries, your own lists. Let's take a look at a quick example of how we can do that. Now, if I'm looking at my list of members of the tribe living, I have a couple of ways to find information. I can actually click on column names to sort by a certain column. If I want to click by a member profile or their birth date or their age, I can sort by any column I want to in the system. I can search for records using a robust search that allows me to use wildcard characters. I can also do some filtering to quickly find record information. I love this filter feature because it gives me the same capability that Microsoft Excel has. I can click on a drop-down next to a column like birthday, click on that drop-down arrow and do my own custom filtering. Maybe looking for those that have a birthday that were born this last year or born a specific year. I can choose those appropriate options. But the most powerful feature that we have within Tribal Platforms Enrollment is Advanced Find. This is where you can really use the power of querying your data. Now, I'm going to access this by clicking on the funnel icon we see in the upper right corner of Tribal Platforms Enrollment. This is going to bring up a window called the Advanced Find, and it's going to give me the capability to search anything in the system. Now, let's say, for example, I like this view that I'm using. members of the tribe living. But I want to be a little bit more specific. Maybe I want to see those members of the tribe that have a seasonal address. So I know that when I'm communicating with them, I'm going to send communication to them to a different address. So how would I find those members that meet that requirement? Well, with an advanced find, you can see that my current view, members of the tribe living, is looking at active members that have not deceased or that are not deceased and that are having a status of members. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use this as a starting point. I'm going to click Save As to create my own view, and I'm going to type in with seasonal addresses. So I still keep that main view intact, but now I'm creating my own personal view. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to add some additional criteria to this. Now, the power of Advanced Find is that I can not only search a simple record like contacts, I can actually query other records as well. For membership, we're going to have address information stored in another type of record. This is known as a physical address. So I can see all these related records that I could potentially search. If I want to look for email addresses, physical addresses, I have lots of different records I could potentially query on. In this example, I'm looking at a completely different record that's connected to member, and I'm going to look for their physical address with an address type of seasonal. So it's very easy to do this. You have a select option where you can choose your appropriate options of the values that you want to search for. And any user within the system will be able to create this appropriate query to utilize within their day-to-day job. So now I've got my physical address, I've got my criteria there. I can also decide which columns or fields I'm going to view when I happen to do this. So let me quickly add another column. I think it'd be helpful for me to see their current address. So I'm just going to add their address 1 field. And now I can run my results, and I can see that out of the 10 tribal members I have, 2 of them right now have a seasonal address. I can take this information and export this to Excel, print this, or send this to somebody else within the organization if I need to. So that's a nice quick way for you to be able to create your own reports, your own queries within Tribal Platforms Enrollment.
That's awesome, Sarah. Thanks for showing us that. That's really cool functionality. We also hear from enrollment users that managing a tribal member address is a real challenge. Not only do they need it to keep an address history, but also allow other department staff to be able to read a member address. Can you show us how Tribal Platforms Enrollment meets this need?
Absolutely. So I was just talking about the example when we're working with a member of trying to find those that have a seasonal address. Well, how do we enter that seasonal address information? So let me take you back into Tribal Platforms Enrollment. And we're actually going to go into a tribal member record here, Joshua Reed. So Joshua, in this example, currently has his primary address listed as 4155 Main Street in Wahpeton, North Dakota. Now, Joshua may have approached us and said, you know what, I need to move. I'm getting to a larger house. We just had a child. So I need you to update my address information. Now, a Tribal Platforms Enrollment user can log into the system, quickly locate Joshua's record, and within the record, we're going to see a lot of important details here that will give me kind of that 360-degree view of Joshua. The one that we're talking about here is going to be the address information. So let me click on Address Information, and this will expand and let me see Joshua's current addresses. So I can see his current home address, his primary address, his physical address is at 4155 Main Street in Wahpeton. I can also see he's got a mailing address as a PO box here as well, but now he's actually moving to a new address. Here's a seasonal address. Now I need to add that information within Tribal Platforms Enrollment. I can simply click the plus sign to add a new physical address record. Now the address type for this one is going to be his home address because he's moving to a new home, and I can enter in the appropriate address details. I'll select his zip code, and I'm going to set this as his new primary address. Now you'll notice that when I mark this as primary, it does provide some guidance for me to let me know that I do need to fill in the street, the city, the state, and the zip. But luckily the system already did it for me. I've met all my requirements. I can simply click Save. Now, not only will this update Joshua's record, and not only will we see this new physical address on his record, I still have that address history listed down here as well. So I can see his current now primary address is 123 Main Street. If I scroll up in his record here, I'll see it's updated on his main record. I also have a map integration, but just to refresh that, I can actually hit refresh on my browser, and then I'll actually see that new map location of where his address is within that city. Now, one of the great things about this address change is that Joshua is actually in a household. So he has other people that live with him. If I take a look at Joshua's household, I can see that he has his spouse, Julia, and their child, baby Penny, that live within this household. So when I change his household address or his house address, this will actually update the address information for his spouse, Julia Myers, and this would actually update that information as well for his child, baby Penny. So this way I can ensure data integrity by updating the address of those household members. So just in case I forgot that I need to go update it, we'll take care of that for you within the system.
That's very cool. That is really going to save a lot of time for managing addresses and being able to see all the history of those addresses. That's great. Another request that enrollment staff receive is a notice that parents have a new child. The enrollment team needs to process the required documents to enroll that baby as a new member. One of the processes to complete is to calculate the blood quantum for the child to assess membership eligibility. Can you walk us through that process, how it works?
Absolutely. Let's go back into Tribal Platforms Enrollment. So let me actually take us into Joshua's record here. So I'm actually going to navigate back to Joshua's contact record. And one of the things that we're going to see with Joshua's information is we'll see some just high-level overview of his membership information. So we can see some vital statistics. We can see the tribe that he is enrolled in, the ID, his membership status as well. But all this information is actually managed on a separate record called the membership profile or the member profile. And I'm actually going to see this member profile record here. Now, I'm going to click on Joshua's record to give you an example of what information we can help track to better ensure that we're verifying his tribal lineage from the appropriate ancestry documents. So in this example, I can see when he became a member, his enrollment date, I can see the ID card information, and then I can see the blood quantum. So we can see that tribal lineage. Now, in this example, Joshua provided us the appropriate ancestry documents to give us his tribal lineage. And I can see that information located within the blood quantum details section here. So we can see his lineage, his blood quantum fraction, the decimal, and we can see all that information within his record. Now, this detail is important with Joshua's baby Penny, because we want her to be able to inherit that tribal lineage from his record. So he's proven his lineage accordingly, and we've entered that within the system. We can see within the membership or the blood quantum detail that we can see the blood quantum fraction for the tribe, his total blood quantum fraction, including all tribes, and then if he's met the threshold for the requirements for our tribal enrollment. Now, this information is going to be helpful when we start working with Penny's record. Now, a lot of the information on this form is pretty sensitive, meaning that it's got some pretty personal information on there. The only people that would see this member profile record is going to be the tribal member enrollment staff. So anyone under tribal enrollment will be able to see this. Any other department that might be accessing the system would not have security to this, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So how is this going to help us configure the eligibility and look at the ancestry lineage for the, baby Penny? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of Joshua's member profile. And we actually have kind of a relationship set up with baby Penny already. We can see that she is going to be a biological child of Joshua. And I want to go to her member record, and I want to look at her member profile so we can continue that process. As you mentioned, they've had a child, they want to enroll that that child in the tribe as well. So within this contact record, I'm going to navigate to Baby Penny's member profile. Now, Baby Penny actually has Joshua as the father and Julia as the mother. So if I scroll down to the blood quantum section and the blood quantum details, I see that I can designate who her biological mother is and who her biological father is. Now, for biological mother, this is simply a field where I can go and select that appropriate record. So here's Julia Myers. Now, notice when I select that, I'm going to see some view information about her. I can see her tribal blood quantum fraction as well as her total blood quantum fraction. So I can see that information without actually having to go to her record. We've already validated and verified this information because it's been added to her member profile. Now, I'm going to do the same thing for the father. I'm going to enter Joshua's information in here. I'll select Joshua Reed, and we'll see the same information for him. Now, notice that Baby Penny doesn't have any blood quantum details, all right? We already have verified that with mom and dad. We're just going to go ahead and save our changes. So I can click the save icon in the lower right corner, or just let auto save take care of it for me. Now, to save you the time, which I'm sure those of you in enrollment can probably do this math in your sleep of figuring out what her tribal blood quantum fraction and decimal would be, the same thing with the total. But we take that guesswork out of the equation for you. Up at the top, we're going to see a button on the command bar called Calculate BQ. This will calculate the blood quantum from Julia and Joshua, Baby Penny's parents. So when I click this, the system will give me a confirmation message saying, are you sure you want to calculate the blood quantum? This will remove any existing blood quantum records and generate new ones based off of the parents. So in this example, I'll click OK. And now the blood quantum calculation will complete. Now it actually completes before I can even tell you it's completing because it does it automatically, very efficiently within the background. Now what it does is it takes mom and dad's blood quantum, adds that together, and then of course divides that by 2. So we can look at the details and we can see the different blood quantum details, that different lineage that we can see that mom and dad provided through their ancestry documents for us to verify, their appropriate lineage. So now Baby Penny is receiving that. We can see her tribal BQ fraction is 11/16 and the appropriate decimal is there. And then the total blood quantum fraction is going to be listed here as well with that decimal. Now, with our requirements to become a tribal member, in this example, Baby Penny has met the threshold for a blood quantum threshold requirement. So we can see that's marked as yes. After we verified all this is correct, we can actually lock this calculation to basically say that this is finalized, nothing's going to be changed anymore. We now have those records in place. So by having that type of history within tribal platforms enrollment, we can make the process of configuring that eligibility just through blood quantum that much easier for your staff.
That's going to be really cool, and thanks for showing that, Sarah.
You bet.
So one other item is today's tribal departments need a 360-degree view of the tribal member with communications and activities for various sources. Can you show us how Tribal Platforms Enrollment can help with member communication?
Absolutely. I'm going to go back into Tribal Platforms Enrollment here. So one of the things when we're talking about that communication, Dynamics 365, or more importantly, Tribal Platforms Enrollment has a capability for us to utilize activities. So using activities, we can enable better interdepartment collaboration. We can collect email, we can collect phone calls or office visit notes in a central location. The Tribal Platforms Enrollment solution is tightly integrated, as we mentioned previously, with Office 365 and Outlook. This will give us the capability to email automatically and have those emails be linked to a tribal member record. So I'm going to navigate back to Joshua's record. And I can do that at any time. I can simply click on Tribal Platforms at the top, bring up my navigation pane. I'll go right back to my contacts. And from here, I can search for Josh's member record, or I can actually just click on his name within my list. The communication that we can track includes items, as we mentioned, phone calls, tasks, notes, emails, and more importantly, we can track that on the member record. So an example might be is Joshua calls into the tribal enrollment office, and we have a conversation with him, and we record that detail within the system. When you're looking at the contact record, you'll see over here on the right-hand side, we have what I call the social and collaboration pane. That's a nice technical term, but more importantly, it's your activities and your notes tabs that are really important for you to see this type of communication. If I click on activities, I can actually see a timeline of the communication that we've had back and forth with Joshua. So as an example, I can see that we had a phone call with him yesterday. And if I wanted to look at the details of that phone call, I can actually expand this to view that summary information. So Josh called to let us know that baby Penny was born on June 15th. We informed him his next step is to come to the office with the appropriate documentation to start the enrollment process. We also emailed him as well. We sent him a reminder to say, hey, congratulations. Go ahead and provide the documents that you have, the required documents for the proof of birth, so we can continue with that enrollment process. Then Joshua called a little bit later on saying he asked for the enrollment form to be sent to his email address, and we continued with that process. So before I even pick up the phone with a tribal member, I can get an idea of the communication we've had with this individual so I can better serve them. If anyone wants to look at the communication before they talk with them, they'll be able to see this information within the activities. So let's take a look at how we can record that information. Now within this activities area, I can see where I can add a phone call, I can add a task, I can click on the ellipses and add more activities if I want to. If I want to email them from the system, I can. But let's say Joshua called and I want to record that phone call. When I click add phone call, it's just going to bring up a simple window for me to record the details of that conversation. I don't need to record the entire call script. I just want to talk about what we discussed at a high level so that anyone else that's wondering what my conversation pertained to, if they've got the high level notes. So Joshua called with a question. About one of the items on the enrollment form. So in this example, say I provided the answer and sent him supporting documentation. Now, obviously I would elaborate on the question that he had and what I sent him, but you get the idea of me being able to record this interaction that I've had with this tribal member. Now with this phone call, I'm gonna scroll down just a little bit so you can see other fields. I can see that a call was with Joshua, but he called us, so I can change that direction to incoming to let us know that he was the one that made the call. We answered. If I was actually calling him to follow up on something, I would keep that call as outgoing so we know who initiated the conversation. I can simply click OK, and it's going to complete this activity. The great thing here is that we're going to see a date and timestamp. So when was this done and who completed it? So it's a great audit history. Now, another feature that we're going to have with this is maybe we want to record information that really isn't part of a conversation. It's just something that we know or something that we did, not necessarily in direct communication with our tribal member. We have the capability to add notes. So in this example, we have a note here for the 2018 summer. Joshua, Julia, and Penny are going to be staying at their lake cabin during the summer. And I wanted to note that because of this, we actually added that seasonal address. But I might also want to include a note here to say we sent Joshua and his family a new baby kit as an example, or a new baby gift. So every time a new baby is born, we actually send them maybe a small gift. And this is a great way for me to track that using the notes functionality. So I can simply add that note, click done, and now I can see that on our timeline of the different types of notes or pieces of information that are helpful. This is really great for other departments. For example, if you need to know that someone might have a hearing impairment, or they might have a visual impairment, or someone is actually going to go on site to their home or to their work or whatever to see any details that might need to know. For example, click on the buzzer, or there might be a dog in the yard, be careful. All sorts of other essential information that might be helpful for us to understand more about this contact. Again, just to better serve them when we work with them.
That's really cool, and there's some cool integration with Office 365 that's really going to be beneficial to the other groups within the organization. So Sarah, we've been looking at tribal platforms enrollment from the perspective of an enrollment staff. It's important for the member master database to allow other staff in the tribe and government to view relevant member details based on their role. Can you walk us through how a non-enrollment staff person would use tribal platforms enrollment?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So I think one of the other benefits that we have with tribal platforms enrollment is the capability for non-enrollment members to be able to access this data. While your enrollment department is kind of the keys, keeping the keys to the data and kind of the gatekeepers of this important information, this is something that other departments are going to find helpful as well. So what would it look like for a non-enrollment member to look at this? Well, I'm actually logged in as another individual here. We're logged in as Matt. And in the scenario I want to kind of show you within tribal platforms enrollment is that non-enrollment member. Matt is a part of the tribal police department. And he just simply needs to have the capability to locate a tribal member's address. So in case he needs to ask them a question or he's providing some type of service, he can access this through the enrollment solution. So Matt is currently logged in. We can see that he's got his picture up here in the upper right corner. And when he navigates to tribal platforms, he's going to see a little bit less detail than what an enrollment user would see. If he were to go to contacts, and under contacts, if he was going to locate Joshua, who we've been working with in our session today, he's going to see a little bit different detail than what an enrollment user would see. For example, just looking at social security number, that's personal identifiable information, details that we don't want necessarily everyone seeing. So what we have here is we actually have what we call field level security. So we're blocking off that field. Only enrollment people or those with appropriate security, I should say, are going to get to see that number. So we know that there's something there, but we just can't see those details. If I scroll down a little bit further into the tribal information, we talked about that member profile record, having sensitive details like their blood quantum, their lineage, their membership status, their membership change requests. That's important information that we want to control who can see that. Again, as just a non-enrollment user, he's not going to be able to look at that detail. But let's move further down into the form. The key thing that Matt is going to need to see is address information. So as he expands address information, he'll be able to locate the physical addresses as well as the electronic addresses. Now, I didn't talk about electronic addresses previously, but we do have the capability to track electronic addresses such as an email, phone number, or social media account. Maybe we just simply need Josh's phone number or an email to ask him a question. But in this case, Matt wants to look at a physical address. Now, as he's looking at these address details, he can see that the primary address that Josh has is now 123 Main Street, Wahpeton. That literally just changed right before Matt came into the system. He can access and see these changes real time. But he also notices that Josh has a seasonal address. And he can take a look at the seasonal record just by clicking on the record itself. I'll just left double click on this address record and he can see the details. So we can see that it's a lake cabin. We just kind of provided a description there. We don't necessarily have an address, but more importantly, we have driving directions for Matt to know how to locate Josh through these driving directions. So we have the details here. He can follow that information and locate Joshua accordingly. Now, one other great benefit that we're going to have with this tribal platforms enrollment is that Matt's more than likely not going to be sitting at a computer to find this information. Tribal platforms enrollment can be actually accessed through a mobile device, such as a cell phone or a tablet, a mobile phone or a tablet. There's an app that they can use to sign in. It will use their credentials and again, only show them information that's important to them. So Matt doesn't have to carry a computer around just to try to locate membership information. This could be applicable to really anyone within the organization that has access to the enrollment data. So other departments that just simply need to access your member master, we're still keeping your data integrity in place by allowing them just to view information. They don't necessarily need to update, but they have that capability if they need to. Matt can actually come in here if necessary and actually add an address change after he's talked to Josh, so we can ensure that that information is up to date and relevant for all of our tribal members and anyone that might use it.
Thanks, Sarah, for that really great demonstration. As you can see, the Tribal Platforms Enrollment serves your organization as a member master database that captures all the tribal member demographics. With this strong foundation of Dynamics 365, we get a familiar and easy to use solution that can adapt and integrate to current and future business processes. Tribal Platforms Enrollment provides a dynamic solution to support the tribal government processes with a simple, unified application. We look forward to sharing more features and capabilities with you in the future webinars. If you're interested in taking a deeper dive into Tribal Platforms Enrollment or want to get this product for your team, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And with that, that's the conclusion of our webinar. We can now open it up if there's any questions or any specific areas that any of our attendees would like to dive into and see if there's a specific piece of functionality you'd like to see. We'll open up the floor. So if you have your question, you can post it in the chat window and we will see your question and then we can go ahead and respond.
So Bryan, we actually do have a great question out there.
Okay.
The question is our software only available as cloud hosted, or do you have a version that can be internally hosted on proprietary servers?
So the answer there is yes, it's actually supported in both scenarios. So it can be cloud hosted. Because we work with Microsoft, they do allow what they call a Microsoft Government Cloud. So tribal organizations are eligible to set up Tribal Platforms Enrollment in a government hosted, which basically provides greater security for the system in a cloud hosted environment. The solution also can be deployed on a Microsoft Dynamics 365 instance on premise as well. And so it can actually, we actually support both scenarios and can work both on premise and in cloud. Great question.
Excellent. We have another question regarding the households. Does the households category allow for multiple simultaneous households? For example, I apologize if I say this incorrectly, fictive kin, blood lineage, legal, residence.
Do you want to go ahead and take that one, Sarah?
Certainly. So I guess one question I probably would have is, if I take us back into Tribal Platforms Enrollment, let's go back to Joshua's record here. So the question is can we have multiple simultaneous households? So blood lineage, legal, residence. In this example, we have a household record, and this is going to be basically people that are at that physical mailing address. Mm-hmm. If there's some type of household information that you want to record in a little bit more detail or expand on that a little bit more, the great benefit of Tribal Platforms Enrollment is that we can customize the system. So we have kind of our base solution here, and if that's something that you want to record, that you might have more than one household that you want to record in that example of, here are people at, from a legal household perspective, that, here are their, biological children in their physical residence, their residence, we might have a completely different set of members in that household. Mm-hmm. We would have the capability to customize and extend the system to meet those requirements.
So for example, Sarah, you could go into the household entity. So there could be the ability to create a, actually you can, from here, go to the household, go navigate to the top. Let's actually click on the household on the navigation bar. Way up on top, no, right, so you can see all households. So there couldn't be a way to create multiple households and then essentially assign, basically one can be assigned to the individual, but there is the ability here to create multiple households. The idea here is that we want to enforce the rule that children, for example, can only be claimed in one household. That was one of the pain points that we've heard, is that children were being claimed in multiple households for the purposes of assistance. So essentially we want to be able to say, Here, in this case, Joshua is a head of household, and who are the people that are a member of that household. And over time, that can change, right? So we want to be able to say Penny can only be claimed, the baby can only be claimed in one household. If that person moves from household to household, that can obviously be updated. But that's a key element here, is they're only a member of one household at a given time. So yes, there is the ability to do that. So we got another question from Mary asking, we are trying to secure a grant that requires a lot of data sets. How does the program compare to other member management systems in regards to creating fields? So the element here is that Tribal Platforms Enrollment has a strong capability to extend functionality and create new entities related to either the contact or programs. We've built a number of modules related to education, to grant management, loan management, and so forth, and we can extend the application, the Tribal Platforms Enrollment, to show the list of, here are all the applications or programs that this individual, Joshua, has participated in. We don't have any set up in this demo environment, but it provides that ability to say, if you've got a program or you're tracking a spreadsheet of participation in a given program, we can very easily add that capability to automate that application and selection process and approval process right within the solution. So John asked another question. Children that are fostered are still legal in both our blood and legal households. Households are not residences. So yeah, so they basically, what you're saying is they can be in legal households. So there is a little bit difference between the legal household and the physical household. What we're showing here is the physical household. So I understand your point about having the legal versus the physical household that they can be a member of. So yes, good point.
And then he actually goes to elaborate to say perhaps the term he's better describing is families. So keeping track of the different families that they're there. And I think, Bryan, maybe you can speak to this as well, as that, Tribal Platforms Enrollment can actually integrate with systems that will help us track that. If you're talking about, providing family services in that respect, there's other applications, there's a partnership that we actually have that can better serve to kind of maintain that type of information. Bryan, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking about the different applications, the modules that we would add within enrollment. Is that what you mean?
Correct. Yep, you could add that and actually track that a little bit better. So in this example, yes, we technically have their physical address where they'd be located, but to be able to track, if they're in a foster home, who is their foster parent and so forth. Absolutely.
So that is absolutely, we've got some family and case management solutions that are integrated here. We purposely didn't include that in this webinar because it would take, we could have a separate webinar just for that. But we do want to show you the idea that we can capture the core demographics of what is used in most enrollment solutions today. And then, essentially the ability to extend this capability or the functionality for other programs and applications and households and way households are defined is essentially limitless. So we work with you to understand your requirements and actually make those changes, as part of the configuration and implementation process within your product or within your program. I mean, we'll have some future webinars and show you some of that strong functionality, because there's a lot of capability that we've built in other modules that tie into, but enrollment is the base functionality. So
excellent. Yep, looks like we've got his question there. Thank you very much, Sean. There's great questions. And everyone's questions. Appreciate that.
I think we will conclude this webinar, and so I wanted to thank Sarah for helping with this great presentation. And from all of us at Arctic IT, thank you for attending the webinar. And we hope to hear from you soon on how we can take our next steps to bring this great functionality to your team. Have a great day.